Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Kari, and today we're going to talk about my favorite books of 2024, and I'm so excited to tell you about them. So I read 77 books in 2024, and today I'm going to tell you about my top 12. All 12 of these got 5 stars, and there's a mix of different genres. There's lots of literary fiction, there's thrillers, there's horror, there's a manga. So it really covers a lot of different genres, so hopefully you'll be able to find something that sounds interesting to you and you can add it to your 2025 TBR. So I have ranked these. I'm going to go from number 12 all the way up to number 1. Even though, like I said, all of these got 5 stars, I was able to do a little ranking. So without further ado, let's jump in. So I only had one manga to make this list this year, and of course it's Nana by Ai Yazawa. I have the first volume here, but this is representing the entire series. I'm going to cheat that way and not just say that the first volume is my favorite. Actually, I didn't really enjoy the first volume. It wasn't until volume 3 that I was like, wow, okay, I'm invested. I want to keep reading in this. But this first volume is just representing the series as a whole. So this is a 21 volume series. It is incomplete. It's been on hiatus for a while now, but don't let that deter you if you're interested in it, because I have really enjoyed the adult themes of this manga. A lot of the manga that I've read so far has been a lot more lighthearted shoujo manga, like Sailor Moon, for example, but this is really more mature than that, and it deals with a lot of adult themes. And the plot itself is just the fact that there are 2 women named Nana, and they randomly meet each other on a train, and they end up deciding that they want to live together in Tokyo. Then it really develops into their friend groups mixing and different relationships that they get into, but also the underlying theme of how they feel for each other. I would say that this is probably my favorite manga series that I've read so far. But like I said, if you're interested in this, I would definitely make sure that you give it at least 3 volumes to give it a chance, because the first 2 volumes were just so for me, but by the 3rd volume, I was like, yes, give me more. So yeah, this is number 12 of 2024, the only manga on this list, Nana. Next, we have a literary fiction called Motherhood by Sheila Heti. And as you can probably guess, the main theme of this book is motherhood. So this is a really meditative story about a woman deciding if she wants to be a mom or not, and about the pushback that she's receiving from society, from her partner, and just different people in her life, and how she feels like she's running out of time to make this big decision. So if you enjoy books that have themes about whether or not to be a mom, the struggles of being a mom, that whole realm of like motherhood themes, as much as I do, I would definitely recommend this book. It's very good. I actually read this originally on my Kindle from my library, and I had to get a physical copy because I need to reread this and do a ton of annotations in this book, and I'm really looking forward to rereading it already. So number 11 on this list was Motherhood by Sheila Heti. Number 10 on my favorite books of 2024 was The Rachel Incident by Caroline O'Donoghue. In this book, we follow Rachel, who is a university student, and we see that from the beginning, she kind of has this little crush on her professor, and her best friend kind of setting up, not a trap, but kind of like a situation for her to be able to run into him and kind of find an opportunity to like figure something out with him, to like, you know, flirt with him or whatever. But then the situation just kind of devolves into something else. And for the whole story, we're really following her relationship with her best friend and kind of the role of this professor and his wife in both of their lives. And overall, the really big themes of this story are about friendship in your 20s. Also just kind of the struggles of living through your 20s and all the difficulties that you face at that age and just trying to get by. And normally if somebody says a book is about friendship, like that's not a buzzword for me. I wouldn't be like, oh, I need to read that. But something about this book, it really made me care about the characters and kind of the mess that they get themselves into. I really cared what was going to happen, and by the end it even made me cry because I was so attached to the characters. I also feel like if you're trying to get into literary fiction, that this would be a good entryway into literary fiction. Like if you feel really intimidated by the genre, I think that this could be a good entryway into literary fiction. If that sounds like your situation, I think that this could be a good first step into the genre. So before we get into the next one, I just want to say quickly that it always amazes me when people put out their lists of favorite books for the year before the year is actually over, because the idea of doing that for myself, it stresses me out so bad, because I'm like, what if I read something on the 31st of December and it ends up on my favorite books of the year list? How do these people know that they're not going to read something amazing at the end of the year and they'll regret that they filmed their favorites list so early? You know, like that idea, it just stresses me out. I cannot do it. And this year it paid off, because something that I read on December 30th is on this list. So number 9 is We Used to Live Here by Marcus Kliewer. So like I said, I read this on December 30th. I'm so glad I waited to commit to my favorite books of the year, because this made it. So this is a horror book from a debut author. And so the setup of this is, you can kind of tell from the title, is that this woman has just bought a new house with her partner, and one day this family, this mom, dad, 2 sons, and a daughter, they show up at the front door, and the dad's like, I used to live here when I was a child. My family's moving out of state now. I would really love to show my kids and my wife the house that I grew up in. Would you mind if we just take 10 minutes to do a little tour around the house just so I can show them my childhood home before we move out of state? And the main character, Eve, in her head, she's like, God, I really don't want to do this. Like, please just leave me alone. But in the end, she ends up accepting, and from that moment, things just start to get worse and worse for her. This book had me on the edge of my seat. I read it within 24 hours. I could not put it down. I was totally hooked. I wanted to know how it was going to end, how it could possibly end. And it's very atmospheric. If you like stories where there's a question about if the home is haunted or not, this is the book for you. Like, it's totally that. And also just the layout of this house that she lives in, it was giving me House of Leaves vibes. It's nothing on the scale of House of Leaves at all, but it really gave me that same atmosphere of the house as House of Leaves. And you know, I love House of Leaves, one of my favorite books of all time. And something else that gave me House of Leaves vibes is the fact that between every chapter, there's some kind of document. Like, there's a police report, or there's an advertisement for something, or like a scientific journal article. And so you kind of have to start piecing together what's happening with the story, and also these little documents between each chapter. What are the connections? And slowly you start to see the connections. So anyway, if you're looking for a captivating horror, I cannot recommend this more. It's been super popular this year for a reason. I just loved it, and I'm going to be thinking about it for a long time. Like I said, I just read it the other day, and every night since then, I've had trouble falling asleep because I'm like creeped out. I like think about new things and I just get creeped out all over again. So if you're interested in that experience, definitely recommend. The 8th book on my favorite books of 2024 is Exalted by Anna Dorn. I've already gushed about this book in my November wrap-up, so if you want to hear more details about this, I will point you there. But basically, this is a literary fiction that has 2 point of views. One point of view is a young woman who runs this really successful Instagram account about astrology. Like, she does a bunch of astrology memes, and she even has a little business associated with it where people send her their birth information and she can kind of like read their astrology chart for them. And she's very successful, but she's starting to question if she actually believes in astrology anymore. And then another point of view is an older woman who is kind of going through a difficult time in her life. Like, she just broke up with her girlfriend, she's having a difficult relationship with her son, and all these different kind of hard times that she's falling on. But we see that she's obsessed with this Instagram account of the other point of view character. And so basically throughout the book, we go back and forth between these 2 perspectives. And I don't really want to give you much more information than that. I just want to let you experience it yourself, because this is so fun. Even if you're clueless about astrology like me, I know nothing about astrology, it was so fun, and I cannot wait to read more from Anna Dorn in 2025. Number 7 on this list is Tampa by Alissa Nutting. So this is a literary fiction that is going to be very divisive. People are either really going to like it or they're really going to hate it, because the premise of this is about a female middle school teacher, and basically about how she grooms some of her male students. So already you can tell you have to be on board with the premise of the story to even give this a chance, and I totally understand it's not going to be for everyone. And when I say on board, I don't mean that you agree with what she's doing. The whole point of the book is that you see how psychotic and disgusting and delusional and vile this woman is. That's the point of the book. You're supposed to hate her. So if you can't like a book because the characters are unlikable, don't read this, don't bother. The point is to not like her, because throughout the whole book you see in her head that she thinks what she's doing is normal, that it's fine, that it's no big deal. Like, one of the blurbs for this book somewhere compares it to American Psycho. Like, she is psychotic. Like, she's doing the most vile, disgusting thing, and the whole time she's justifying it to herself. So the point of this book is to hate her. But the writing in this book is so good, it makes you want to keep reading to see how can this possibly get worse, and you just want to see how it ends for her. So yeah, I really love this. Of course, the content is disgusting, but the book itself, it's really well written. I really appreciated how it was done. Alissa Nutting did a really amazing job. And actually, next year in 2025, there's an anthology collection coming out that has works from Anna Dorn and Alissa Nutting in it. It's called Be Gay, Do Crime. An ARC is already in the mail for me, and I cannot wait to read it because I loved Anna Dorn and Alissa Nutting in 2024, so I cannot wait to read more from them in 2025. So the sixth book on this list is A Life's Work by Rachel Cusk. This is a nonfiction from the author Rachel Cusk, who is really more known for her fiction. Like, she wrote the Outline trilogy, for example, and a bunch of other books. I did not realize how big her backlist is, but she has written so many books. But this is the first book that I've ever read from her, and similarly to Motherhood by Sheila Heti that I already talked about, that's about a character deciding if she wants to be a mom or not. This is nonfiction about Rachel Cusk being literally in that position herself. Because like I said, this is nonfiction, her writing about her own life and her own decision about whether she wanted to be a mom or not. And I cannot express how beautifully written this book is. It's insane. There's so many quotes that I took note of. I originally read this on my Kindle from my library. I immediately went out and bought a physical copy. I cannot wait to reread this and do my annotations physically in this book, because literally I cannot express to you how many freaking quotes stood out to me that I wanted to write down and just keep forever and just reread over and over again. I will spare you that. I wanted to read some quotes to you in this video, but I'm like, just let them experience it themselves. Let them read it themselves to experience how beautifully written it is. Just trust me. It's one of the most beautifully written books I've ever read. It's one of those types of writings where you kind of have to read it slowly just to take it all in, and I love that. After I read this book, I immediately went and read another book from her, Aftermath, and even though that's not on this list, I absolutely loved it too. That would be an honorable mention. And these two books solidified for me that I have to read a bunch of Rachel Cusk in 2025, because if this is what she's doing in her nonfiction, and her nonfiction isn't what she's known for, imagine what she's doing in her fiction, which is what people talk about when they talk about Rachel Cusk. So I can't wait to read more from her. Again, if you're interested by the themes of motherhood, whether or not to be a mom, the difficulties of being a mom, this one also explores the difficulties of being a mom, the things that people don't talk about when you're a mom, and the things that you kind of have to suffer through as a mom, but nobody talks about it. That is also explored in this book. I just love this. I cannot wait to read more Rachel Cusk. I'm getting well heated up talking about these books. Number 5 on this list, we have a thriller. It's No Exit by Taylor Adams. Whenever a book just consumes my thoughts and my entire life for like 24 hours, it has to be on my favorite books of the year. And that's what happened with this book. I could not put this down. I read it within 24 hours. I was glued to the couch until I finished this book because I had to know how it was going to end. And when a book does that for me, it's a favorite of the year. So this is about a young woman who's driving to go see her dying mom. And I'm pretty sure it's across state. It's a pretty far distance where she's going, but there's a really bad snowstorm, and so she has to pull off into a rest area. And when she gets there, there's a few other people already there, like they also had to pull off the road because they absolutely cannot keep driving in this snowstorm. And so this small group of people, they're going to be spending the night together probably to wait out the snowstorm so that they can all get back on the road. And so over this period of time, this young woman, she starts to learn more and more about these people, and at one point she goes outside to try to get a better cell signal, and she sees something kind of suspicious in the back of one of the other people's cars, and it totally changes everything. And she realizes, this is an emergency. What am I going to do about this? And this is on the back of the book, so it's not a spoiler, don't worry. It's like the setup of the book, because what she sees in the back of the car is a young girl locked up in like a dog crate. So there's a ton of urgency to this situation. How is she going to deal with the people inside? How is she going to figure out who did this to her, why they did this to her? How are they going to get help because they're stranded in the snow? It was just a really fast-paced thriller. I loved it. Like I said, I could not put it down. So if you're looking for something to get you out of a reading slump, could not recommend this more for that. I loved it. So for the 4th book on this list, similarly to No Exit, another book that I picked up and I could not put it down until I found out how it was going to end, Incidents Around the House by Josh Malerman. This is a horror book that I could not put down despite being absolutely terrified. I was petrified of this book. Like, I had such a hard time sleeping after I read this book. Like, seriously, it scared me so bad. But that's what you want out of a horror book, right? Like, that's what you go to a horror book for. I flew through this. I could not put it down. I needed to know how it was going to end. I just loved it. So basically the setup for this book is that there's this family, the mom, dad, and a little girl. And this little girl, she says that she can see this woman who is called Other Mommy. So it's kind of like Coraline vibes, okay? So there's this woman that she can see that calls herself Other Mommy. And of course, her mom and dad can't see this person. And so of course there's this question of what is happening to our daughter? Why is she imagining things? This is weird. And the little girl is telling us that this other mommy always asks her, can I go into your heart? And the little girl keeps telling her, no, no, you can't come into my heart. No, no, no. I'm getting creeped out just talking about it. But the thing is that the parents are like, that can't be real. Like, there's no way that that's real. Like, what's happening with our kid? Which is understandable, right? But then this other mommy, she starts to make her presence more known, and things start to get creepier and creepier, more serious and more serious. And the tension in this, it just builds and builds. And like I said, I cannot tell you how creeped out I was. It was really fun. I just absolutely loved it. I had such a good time. So if you're looking for something like that you just can't put down and you want to be a little bit scared, I cannot recommend this more. I thought it was such a good time. Also, I do want to say that a lot of times horror books, like, they're just there to scare you. There's not like a lot of depth to it. Like, it scares you and that's what you want. But I found in this book there was a lot more depth than I was expecting, because there's some problems between the mom and dad in this family. And I just found the way that Josh Malerman portrayed it, that it gave it a bit more depth to the story, and it wasn't just like surface level, here's a horror book to scare you. Like, there's definitely depth to the characters, and I really appreciated that. That made me like the story even more. All right, we're to the top 3. I'm so excited to tell you about these books. So number 3 is Soldier Sailor by Claire Kilroy. This is a literary fiction that I bought at the end of 2022. I was already interested in it. And then in 2023, it was longlisted and then shortlisted for the Women's Prize for Fiction. And so as soon as it was longlisted, I was like, I should get to that book. I was already interested in it, and now it's longlisted. Like, let's just read it now. And oh my God, I love this book. First of all, it should have won the Women's Prize for Fiction because it was just amazing, but that's a whole other point. But basically, like I said, it's a literary fiction about a woman who has just become a mother. Are you sensing a theme in these books? The books that really drew me in this year. So this woman has just become a mother, and this book just follows her intense struggle with being a new mom. Similarly to what I said about Rachel Cusk's A Life's Work, where I said that she explores the things that nobody talks about motherhood, about how hard it is and the difficulties of it, and nobody talks about it. This is similar to that, but obviously this is fiction, but this woman is going through it. It's also exploring her relationship to her husband and how strained their relationship is because of this new arrival in their household. And it's a really beautifully written examination of her mental state after having a baby. And I love stories like that. It really makes me think almost of The Yellow Wallpaper, if you've looked at The Yellow Wallpaper through the lens of hysteria and less like a gothic story, like more through the lens of the fact that she's suffering from postpartum depression. Those themes are very similar to this. Like, she is literally losing it. Also, you know that I'm a sucker for beautiful writing, and this is incredibly beautifully written. And also, I bawled my eyes out at one point in this book. I cried so hard. So yeah, definitely should have won the Women's Prize for Fiction this year, but that's okay. It made it in my top 3 of my favorite books of 2024 instead. I mean, that's more prestigious, right? All right, my number 2 favorite book of 2024 is My Husband by Maud Ventura. This is another one I've already gushed about in my November wrap-up, but basically this is a translated literary fiction. It's translated from the French by Emma Ramadan, about a woman who is obsessed with her husband, like truly obsessed. And I love a book about obsession, okay? And right at the beginning of the book, we see that her husband tells her, we need to talk later. And then the book just rewinds, I think it's like a week, and we see every day leading up back up to that point, and we're able to witness how she is in this relationship, what her obsession with her husband leads her to do, how she acts to her husband, how she talks to her husband, the way that she thinks about her husband, the things that she's willing to do for their relationship, the way that she manipulates him and gets him to do things, and really just her mental state in general. And like I said, we're just leading back up to that point where he says, we need to talk later. And I just loved this because, like I said, I love a book about obsession, but also I love a book with an unlikable main character, a book about women's wrongs. I mean, this is just everything that I love in a book, and it did not let me down. I loved it so much. I highlighted so many things in this book. And so basically throughout the whole book, it's her thinking that her husband's going to leave her. And so she's really just like spiraling in that mindset. And there's a quote that I absolutely loved about that. It's easy to identify a first time, but we rarely know when something is happening for the last time. How could I have guessed that it was our last carefree Monday, the last dinner with our friends, the last time he would make love to me? If I had known, I would have imprinted in my body's memory each of his thrusts, his breath on my neck, the way he turned me over on the mattress. And on a larger scale, how could I have foreseen that it would be our last Christmas, the last of our daughter's birthday celebrated together, our last vacation? If we could identify our last times as easily as our first times, thousands of moments would be lived more intensely. I just love that quote because it's really true that you need to appreciate every small moment because you never know when those small moments are going to stop happening. But also the quote is really illustrating how she's just spiraling thinking that her husband's going to leave her. So anyway, this was my second favorite book of 2024, My Husband by Maud Ventura. I loved it so much that I bought the French version because if you don't know, I live in France. And so I definitely want to read this in French, hopefully in 2025. I think it'll be fun to see if I catch any differences between the two because I did see an interview of the author where she was talking about the fact that her book was being translated to English and what a big deal that is. And also kind of some of the struggles that they have with different parts of the book, things that they changed. Because she said that actually, you know how I said that at the beginning of the book, the main character's husband says we need to talk later. The author said in the interview that in the French version, that doesn't happen. Like her American publisher told her that she should take this part that happens later in the French version, that it happens more towards the end of the book. Her American publisher told her that it should be at the beginning of the book to kind of create suspense for the rest of the book. If they do like this rewind into the previous week before that moment happens, that American audiences would appreciate that like suspense. That's so interesting. Like I love that. So I'm really interested to see what are other little changes that they made throughout the translation process. So My Husband or Mon Mari by Maud Ventura. Amazing. All right, we're down to my favorite book of the year. Can you guess what it's going to be? I read it pretty early in the year, so if you followed my reading this year, I bet you could guess that it's The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt. I loved this book. This is in my top 5 favorite books of all time now. This is a masterpiece. Donna Tartt is a literal genius. Because if you don't know, The Secret History by Donna Tartt is my #1 favorite book of all time. And so I was so excited to read something else from her. And this did not let me down. I loved this book. So this is a literary fiction that follows Theo, who's 13 years old, and he lives in New York City with his mom. And we find out that he has gotten in trouble at school, and so he has to go to a meeting with the principal with his mom. And the meeting with the principal is at like noon or something. Like it's not in the morning, and he's not allowed to go to school before that. Like he's gotten in so much trouble, he can't even go to school in the morning. And so they decide that they're going to go to the Metropolitan Museum of Art to kill some time because his mom is really into art, in particular a lot of the Dutch art that is at the Met. And then when they're just about to leave the museum, his mom is like, wait here, Theo, I want to run back and just look at one of my favorite paintings again one last time. Just wait here for me. I'll be right back. But then the worst possible thing happens. There's a terrorist attack at the museum, and Theo's mom does not survive the attack. By the way, this is all literally in the first like 1 or 2 chapters. This is literally just like the jumping off point of the whole book. The scale of this book is so huge, which I'll get to in a minute. This is literally just like the jumping off point. So Theo survives the terrorist attack, and he ends up stealing one of the paintings from the museum, which is The Goldfinch, painted by Carl Fabricius. And so he manages to get out of the museum with the painting, and the rest of the book just follows his coming of age because he only lived with his mom. He has no connection with his dad. And so it was a big question of, okay, where is Theo going to live now? And he gets kind of passed around from family to family. And it follows the different connections with different people that he meets and friendships that he has. And it follows him from the age of 13 when the beginning of this book happens up until he's an adult. The scale of this book is so huge, and you feel the scale of the book because, like I said, it ranges so many years, it ranges so many different places in the entire world. You see so many different things happen to Theo throughout his life, and all the while the presence of this painting, The Goldfinch, is in the background, and you're constantly wondering what's going to happen to him because he stole a literal painting from the Met, and like the Met has put out a police report that this painting is missing, and like everybody knows that it's missing, and he's just holding on to it for years and years and years. But this is the one thing that reminds him of his mom, and so it means so much to him. And yeah, I could talk for so long about this book. Actually, I already have talked a bunch about this book. This is my review for the whole book. So if you're interested in hearing my full thoughts and like an analysis of the themes and different things, I'll link that video in the description box so that you can hear all my thoughts. But I just loved it so much. Like it felt so complete. Like it is a huge book. Like Donna Tartt just immerses you in the world of Theo so beautifully. I refuse to shut up about how good of an author Donna Tartt is, and I cannot wait to read My Little Friend in 2025 so that I can finish the trifecta of Donna Tartt books. And wouldn't it be amazing if she came out with her next book in 2025. I mean, she is overdue because there's about 10 years between each of the 3 books that she's already published, and it's been over 10 years now since she published The Goldfinch. Donna, I think we're due for a book, please. I'm begging you, please, Donna, please give us another book. So yeah, The Goldfinch, my #1 favorite book of 2024. It's in my literal top 5 favorite books of all time now. I love this book. Please read it. Let's talk about it. I just love Donna Tartt so much. So those were my top 12 favorite books of 2024. I love them all so much. I had such a good reading year in 2024. I found so many new favorite books of all time. I am just really happy with how my 2024 reading went. I would love if you let me know what your favorite books of 2024 were in the comments. I'm always looking for more book recommendations, so put those in the comments. I would love to chat with you about it. I can't wait to get the 2025 reading year started and hopefully find many more new favorite books. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll talk to you again next time. Bye!